Ayaka is finally here after her previous Eternal banner and a lot has changed since then. You may be conflicted on whether you should vote for her or not, so I'll be covering many topics related to Ayaka to help you decide for yourself if you really need Ayaka. And with that, let's begin. Ayaka has quite a few pros and not many cons. Ayaka, as you all know, is a very good DPS. Her charge attack, skill, and ult all do quite a lot of damage, with her ult being the best. She's just a really strong DPS for many reasons and also doesn't require a lot to be really strong as a free-to-play. A great best-in-slot artifact set, a great free-to-play weapon, all of which makes her a really strong character. She doesn't have a lot of cons like I said before, but there's one thing that you've probably heard many people mention is her ult, which can be a bit hard to use properly and can easily miss if the enemy moves a lot. So you usually play her in freeze teams. If you don't like freeze teams, it may not be something you want. Another thing could be her ult sprint, which some people don't like, but now it is a lot better after the recent changes and it makes it a lot faster to travel, which could be good if you're just starting out and you don't have Scaramouche or Yalan. There's a lot more things, of course, which I will tell you as we go on. One thing I really like about Ayaka is how free-to-play friendly she is. Like for example, her weapon, you don't need her 5-star weapon for her to be strong, or a 4-star weapon that you can obtain through wishing. All you need is the Ame no Mikage Uchi, which is a craftable weapon and is really strong for Ayaka. This is the weapon I'm using for her. For her, it's R5, and that is something I really appreciate when characters have weapons that are easily available to a player. Even her teams are really flexible. By which I mean, of course, her basic freeze team with Kokomi, Kazuha, and Shenhe. This is, of course, a very expensive team and, of course, strong too, but can be replaced by Barbara, Sucrose, and Kaya. I made an in-depth video explaining her teams, which you can watch later if you want to. So yeah, if you don't have the characters like Kokomi, Kazuha, Shenhe, you can replace them and have a functioning team. It won't be as strong as the other team, but it will definitely be way better than the usual makeshift teams most of us probably had in the beginning of the game. Since Ayaka's release, she's still very viable and strong in the Abyss, and I think it will stay like this for a very long time. Here's the question people usually ask: which is better, Ayaka or Ganyu? I have both Ayaka and Ganyu, and I've been using them for a very long time. I've used both of them together in teams and separately, and basically have a lot of experience with them. I would say that Ayaka is a better DPS than Ganyu, but even the slightest bit of personal preference can sway your decision. They both have different things they can do and can be played differently. There are some things Ayaka can do that Ganyu can't, and vice versa. Ganyu has a really good burst that can be used for other teams because it has a good AoE and good cryo application, whereas you can't really use Ayaka in this way. Ganyu is good, but I think Ayaka is just a bit better. You can't really go wrong if you decide to go Ganyu instead. Like, they're both really strong and amazing characters. I mean, I really liked Ganyu's burst for other teams, but personally, I don't like using her as a DPS. This is my personal preference. But let's say you already have Ganyu. Then should you go for Ayaka? It wouldn't be the end of the world if you decided to get both. Like, of course, I have both Ayaka and Ganyu. But if you have Ganyu, you don't really have to go for Ayaka. I mean, they're both really strong characters, and having two strong characters in your account isn't a bad thing. It's just you already have a good cryo DPS, so need another one. But of course, they can work together also. Like, you can have Ayaka and Ganyu. Now, a really important topic is, pulling for different Ayaka, I guess, equipment, like Shenhe or her Ayaka constellations or Mistsplitter. If you're comparing Ayaka cons against Shenhe and Mistsplitter, first let me talk about Ayaka cons themselves. Her first con is honestly Ayaka's worst constellation, which is unfortunate. So it basically means if you want to make your Ayaka stronger, you gotta start from C2. The C1 basically improves your rotations by allowing you to use your skill quicker, but then C2 is where things begin to change. Here, her C2 is really powerful and creates two smaller ults that do lesser damage than the original ult, but still makes it easier for your Ayaka to hit her ult and increases her damage by even more, and is basically a really strong constellation. Her C4 is also pretty good and reduces the enemy's defense, so not just your Ayaka but even your teammates will be doing more damage. And finally, her C6, which makes her charge attack a lot stronger. I think C4 and C6 are definitely overkill, but I think C2 is a good stopping point for Ayaka if you really want her cons. Ayaka is one of those characters that doesn't really need constellations. I mean, most 5-stars don't, because again, Ayaka is really strong. Shenhe, of course, will make your Ayaka stronger, and not just Ayaka, but any future Cry characters that you get will be stronger. which makes her really viable. But it's not like you must have her. Like I've seen many people who have, Ganyu, Ayaka, Eula, but decide not to go for Shenhe because they don't need Shenhe, as they're all pretty good alone. And then we have Mistsplitter, which is a really good weapon and can be used by many characters, and honestly only depends on the other weapon. This is the same story for many weapon banners. If you have a really good weapon and the other weapon is really bad, it's better to skip that banner. Unfortunately, if you have two good weapons on the same weapon banner, then it might be, it may be viable to go for the weapon. Usually they're a scam though. Usually you need to make sure you have enough primogems to get the weapon itself, because here you don't have a 50-50, you have to get 2 and then you will get your final weapon if you're very unlucky. And this time on the weapon banner it will be the Calamity Queller, which is, I guess, a good weapon. It is a good weapon. It's not great if you don't have Shenhe. I personally wouldn't go for anything with my primogems. Like I wouldn't go for the Ayaka constellations or Mistsplitter or Shenhe. I honestly would just save up for the next character. But let's say you really wanted to pull. So Ayaka cons or Shenhe, Ayaka cons or Mistsplitter, or Shenhe or Mistsplitter. These are the questions you might be asking, and let me answer them one by one. So if you were confused between Ayaka constellations or Shenhe, I would say Shenhe, because even though Ayaka cons are strong, you don't need them. And the same goes with Shenhe. But Shenhe will provide you with, that future proofing, I guess, because whichever new character that, which is Cryo, will be buffed by, Shenhe, which is a great thing. Between Ayaka cons and her weapon, if you have the primogems for it, I'd say go for Mistsplitter. You end up getting a weapon that can, universally be used by many other characters, and it's pretty good. Also, if you have Shenhe, you can give her the Calamity Queller, so it's a win-win. Of course, this is only when you have C1, okay? And between Shenhe or Mistsplitter, definitely Shenhe again for the same reasons I mentioned above. Now, what about the future banners? Now, we already have an idea that soon enough we're gonna get Nahida back, and maybe even Zhongli. It's been a while, and Zhongli and Nahida, they're both really strong characters. Same with Iron Shogun. There are a lot of strong characters coming soon. Then, should you go for Ayaka or skip her? Most of this I can't really help you with because it really depends on your account and personal preference. If you need a DPS, you should get Ayaka. But with Dendro now, you can make a team without a DPS and still get away with it because of how Bloom works. She's not a must, but I would recommend having at least one broken DPS in your account, like someone like Ayaka, Ganyu, Hu Tao, just to make it easier if there was an abyss you couldn't beat for whatever reason. So should you pull for Ayaka? She's not a must pull, but is she worth it? Yes, definitely. A very strong character that will be viable for a very long time and won't hurt your account if you go for her, and just makes it easier for you to beat the abyss. And if you don't have a character that makes it easier to travel, then that's another plus point to getting Ayaka. Honestly, I know this might sound dumb, but I pulled for Scaramouche mostly because of his skill to go around faster. Like I have this team with Yaemiko, Wanderer, Yelan, and Kazuha, which makes a super fast unlimited stamina team and makes it so much easier to travel. But again, it's all on your personal preference. If you like Ayaka, go for her. If not, skip her. Also, make sure just if you have any questions, make sure you let me know, and I'll see you guys next time.